Was I experiencing serious deja vu on Wednesday? It felt like I was watching the Newcastle game from 8 days ago, swarmed and suffocated in midfield, conceding twice within close proximity, conceding early in the second half to basically dust it, late consolation goal, Martin Tyler and Matt Holland droning on in the background. I mean, this is the problem when a manager from an opposing team finds the formula against you. It's right there for others to draw inspiration, something we seriously lacked in our FA Cup fourth round exit. I made it a triple for this one. Let's review Villa 1, Chelsea 3. I tweeted, X'd, at halftime about how eerily similar the Wednesday game was to the Newcastle United visit. I mean, you had the opponent scoring twice in the first half in very close proximity, and then you had the early second half goal. By the way, that was never a foul, which was irritating, but after that, take nothing away from the Enzo versus Emi all-Argentine free kick battle, which was spectacular. But that goal absolutely killed the belief in this game, and then we had the late consolation goal by Diaby. It reminded me actually of one of my favorite movies of all time, an utter classic, which me and my missus watched just the other day to commemorate Groundhog Day. Rise and shine, campers! Here now lies Unai Emery and his technical team's next biggest challenge, and that is the adjustment to the adjustment. And the glimmer of hope we have is that under Unai Emery, our reaction to losses like Wednesday has been very, very good. Very rarely since he's taken over have we thrown up back-to-back stinkers. But the inception of Wednesday's loss, the first half at Chelsea and the loss at home to Newcastle, in my opinion, goes all the way back to Boxing Day at Old Trafford. I call this the Holy Trinity show because, apart from the Trinity Road stand, Trinity also means three, the three big issues or moments that defined Villa 1, Chelsea 3. And I found the key numbers actually quite misleading. I wonder if there was an intern keeping track of the statistical information. I would have guessed much lower accurate long balls and a wider spread in accurate passing in general. We weren't credited with a single big chance either in that game, even though Bailey and McGinn had very good looks. And I didn't include it, but we had more interceptions and duels won than Chelsea, which just did not feel possible given the way the game played out. I would hope that you know me well enough to realize that I try really hard to take the emotion out of analysis, but even I found that hard on Wednesday because of the eerie similarities with the Newcastle loss just 8 days earlier. And by the way, in my living room, I didn't have to put up with 6,500 Chelsea fans singing "Your City is Blue." That would have been really difficult for me. I was broiling on my couch. I can't imagine what that would be like in person. I would find it very difficult and frustrating and irritating and probably bordering on infuriating. There are two sides to every game, and there are two teams trying to achieve the same objective. Forgive me for just laying it out plain, but you try to identify the weaknesses in your opponent and exploit them. That's the tactics, followed by the application of the tactics. And what I saw on Wednesday was an Aston Villa side that failed in both regards, both with and without the ball. And why people get nervous is that's the second time in 3 games at home that this has happened. And I don't want to make it sound like an excuse, but the truth is, sometimes one team is just livelier, more energetic, has a bit more quality or ruthlessness, and more belief than the other. And in this case, it was Chelsea. Now, you would hope and expect that £1 billion would buy you a half-decent side. And between Moises Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, Noni Madueke, represents a stunning £235 million worth of business. And ironically, the homegrown guy who was free and who it sounded like they were trying to peddle for around 40 million, Conor Gallagher, was the man of the match. But I'm telling you, that collection of the highest potential, upper echelon young talent is going to figure it out at some point. And that's just the players on the park. Think about who wasn't playing in that game, like Mudryk, for example, one of many golden boy hipster footballers with neck tattoos that Todd Boehly was collecting for fabulous sums, even if there were players similar to him already in the squad. They are taking a very different approach to recruitment than us. We don't have the revenues to be able to compete on that level. We have to be extremely strategic. Still, I do wonder how Chelsea is able to spend at that level, but that's for another day. If we're being honest with ourselves, you could see the pace, power, and quality in that Chelsea side. And by the way, the guy leading it is no slouch. A highly respected and experienced manager who likes working with young players. And oddly, they didn't turn in that kind of performance in the league at home to Wolves over the weekend. It's almost as if this young Chelsea side maybe prefers to play away from Stamford Bridge, where maybe the scrutiny is a little bit more intense. This was the first time since Unai Emery took over that Ezri Konsa was not involved in his team, which is incredible on its own. And I'm not saying for a minute that this was the biggest reason why Villa lost on Wednesday, but with that kind of stability, you could see how he was amiss, not to mention his pace over short and long distances against what looked like a very athletic and dynamic team. And here's the glass half full part about that. Thank goodness that was just a sprain and not a rupture or something worse. Big issue number 3, early and easy. In an FA Cup replay that's scoreless, obviously the first goal is going to be crucial. So giving one away just 11 minutes in is not optimal. And like so many incidents in this game, Aston Villa had possession and then gave away a transitional moment that led to chances. Boubacar Kamara had a very difficult day. He was being murdered on the socials, one person saying he couldn't pass wind effectively in this game. And this is where, as a footballer, you need to have a thick skin. Because when you and I make a mistake at work, maybe a coworker will know about it, perhaps even your boss may find out about it. But generally and hopefully nobody dies. It's not a big deal. But when a footballer like Boubacar Kamara makes a mistake and gives the ball away, which leads to the 1-0 goal, well, 42,000 people in the stadium and millions more on TV are all there to watch it. Amazingly, Kamara's pass completion percentage stats showed 88%, which seemed awfully high for my eyeballs and my memory. But many Villa players turned the ball over, which led to changes of possession and chances. And for part of that, you have to give credit to Chelsea for their application and their work rate. But on this one, it was like so many of our giveaways, slow and sloppy. And when we're sharp and tidy, our midfielders give themselves the space and position themselves in a way that when they receive the ball, they have time to make that next pass. And by the way, they need somebody else to pass to as well, farther up the field. Once the ball was turned over and it found its way to Conor Gallagher, I'm not saying this was easy for Gallagher, but what he does was what we weren't doing. Position himself in a way that if the ball came to him, he'd have the time to do what he wanted, which in this case is stick it in the top corner. Douglas Luiz had a very tough game. Twice he flew past the ball. I'm not sure what he was thinking, but I think he was trying to win it back, and he just flew straight past the football and then was completely caught out of position. I mean, he didn't run at the right angle. He wasn't patient, and it turned into chances going the other way. Well, on the goal here, did Douglas Luiz, who was the closest player to Gallagher, do everything he could to close it down, maybe hurry the shot, or at least get a big enough piece of it that it wouldn't trouble Emi Martinez. Well, he does none of the above. He does what I call sticking out the lazy leg. Obviously, conceding 11 minutes in changes the entire dynamic and complexion of the game, not to mention the mood inside the stadium. And then there's the statistical anomaly that has the team scoring first, going on to win roughly 75% of the time. But I truly wonder, because it only happened 8 days earlier, whether some of the Villa players did have thoughts of the Newcastle game when they conceded first, and obviously when they conceded again shortly thereafter. Big issue number 2, out of control. Aston Villa's MO since Unai Emery took over, I've said this a million times, is to control the game and control the football. When you control the football, the opponent doesn't have the football, therefore you control the game. Sometimes you are going to slow the game down to a halt, and you're not going to score from every single build-up that you start from the back. But again, if you have the ball, the opponent does not, therefore you control the game. And for the most part, the Villa players have executed that plan beautifully. I referenced Douglas Luiz earlier, flying past the football a couple of times as he was trying to win it back. And in my opinion, if a Douglas Luiz who's switched on and following his defensive principles, he doesn't do that. He closes down the space, but he doesn't overcommit and dive in. And if he can't win the ball, at least then he forces his opponent to play it backwards. Kamara's loose pass, which ultimately led to the opening goal, was just one of numerous examples of giving the ball away in bad areas of the field that led to chances the other way. And then we also had a tough time out of possession, trying to go and get control of the game and winning it back through our own press. So there's the technical application of control. But then you have the mental side of it as well. Like when you concede first, how does your behavior change? Are you all of a sudden throwing your objectives out of the window and rushing things and not being as selective with your passing, not being as patient? I know they've worked on this a lot, controlling the game and moments within a game. And the last thing that Unai Emery would have wanted after conceding on the 11th minute is to then concede again 10 minutes later. And that's a great example that we had neither the technical nor mental control of this game. I continuously marvel at and will never take for granted the progress we've made under Unai Emery in just 15 months' time, especially given the players he's had at his disposal, many of whom I wondered belonged at our club or even in the Premier League. And with that success has come increased expectation. Last year may have been a surprise to many. It wasn't to us, but for other teams it might have been. Well, now we're not a surprise anymore, and teams are doing their homework on us. And I also wonder, too, with the players. They've had Unai Emery as a boss now for 15 months, not necessarily tuning him out. That's not the right way of putting it, and they do want to improve individually and collectively, of course. But is there a tendency maybe to flatline a little bit on the messaging? I can't say. What I do know for sure, though, it doesn't matter what club you are and what kind of budget you have. It is virtually impossible to continuously and consistently go in this upward trajectory without hitting a bump in the road at some point. And I feel like a bump in the road is inevitable with us. This is obvious, but we desperately need an injection of fresh faces coming back into the squad again to give us a little enthusiasm and a little something different, especially Pau Torres. We've built our entire control-based system around this player. He can read the game, dictate the tempo, make the short, medium, and long passes. He can step in at the right moment, make interceptions, and send us the other way. We've missed Luca Dean as well, and the work he's done in the front third. Obviously, Emi Buendia's buzzing energy was a huge loss, and then Tyrone Mings' stature and vocal presence is also missed. But you know, even an eligible Morgan Rogers might have come in handy in this game with his size, his physicality, his speed, his technical ability in tight areas. You know, he would have loved to have played against Cole Palmer. Just before we get to number 1, Paul Hansaker was not at the game on Wednesday night. He was watching at home like me. We were exchanging face palm emoji messages. That's Paul's favorite emoji, by the way, the face palm. That could be a trivia question one day. 24/7 Services did a fantastic job on the entrance to this home. Jay and Naughty are talented when it comes to color. This is something you're born with, by the way, your ability to see color and how it should work. Just like the football, you're born with that talent. And I really appreciate you calling 24/7 services for work, which, by the way, you can now do from your mobile straight from the website. You just touch the number to the office you want and it'll connect you. But I do hope that when you call my beloved sponsor, you're serious about having the work done and not just, as we say, tire kicking, because Paul has a heavy workload as it is. In fact, it's starting to cut in on his Villa time. And the number one issue that defined Villa 1, Chelsea 3, but it's been a bigger issue than just this game, Villa unveiled. How we react to this game and a couple of others could define our season, quite frankly. As I alluded to earlier, it was Erik ten Hag who I think hacked our system, and now Unai Emery and his IT team need to reboot the hard drive and recalibrate our system, because you know teams like his on Sunday are going to come and try the very same approach again. And the similarities, the hallmarks between the visit to United, the visit by Newcastle, and the two games against Chelsea have been profoundly obvious. Opponents are pressing Kamara and Luiz hard, usually on our own side of midfield. In fact, I think they're targeting Kamara now, but oftentimes 30 yards from our own goal. And without having that extra available option in Pau Torres, who's so good at reading and anticipating and playing the ball between lines, we are now forced to execute plan B, which is going over or around. And in order to go around, you need your fullbacks high and available. But how many times in these tricky games have Emi Martinez, Diego Carlos, or Clement Lenglet floated the ball either over or beyond or behind our fullbacks? This wasn't reflected in the statistical story, but the eyeballs tell me it happened a lot. Chelsea, like Newcastle and Man United, knew when to step in and when not to. They had the triggers right for their press. They were just better at their spacing, both in and out of possession. Youri Tielemans and John McGinn were completely nullified in that first half. So how do you change it? Because you know Erik ten Hag is going to bring the exact same approach to us on Sunday, and now he has that hack job blockhead Casemiro available to go kick lumps out of our much less physical midfield. The first thing I think we need to do is to just simply work harder to get into better positions to support our teammates, receive the ball, and then have time to work it up the field. And that needs to happen in all three phases of the park. Be connected, be available. And that comes down to effort and hard work. And then after that, I think we've got to get the ball moving faster by reducing the touches. And that requires us to be neat and tidy. And here's where all the theoretical strategic planning and tactics go out the window without the application. But there's a hard and fast rule in football. The ball runs faster than any player and it never gets tired. So we've got to get it moving, and we've got to get it moving on fewer touches. That requires sharp minds and sharp touches, which we did not have on Wednesday. In my humble and big picture, I think we really need to prioritize central midfield in the summer transfer window. And our aim should be, as ridiculous as it may sound, to upgrade either Kamara, Luiz, or both. I know that's expensive, but we need options. We are thin there right now, and it would be great to have some kind of brute in that position to draw from. We've been linked to Palacios at Bayer Leverkusen, who is the guy that is kind of making that team tick, and they're at the top of the Bundesliga right now. I know a lot of teams are chasing him, the Argentine. He's more of a quick and technical player than the big, strong midfield type, but still, we're an injury away from real trouble in our central midfield. Up next, of course, Manchester United, the team that hacked our system. And this is the fixture that began the Unai Emery era, which started with a Leon Bailey goal just 7 minutes in. And oh, how we could use a performance like that to vanquish the disappointment of another early FA Cup exit. Did we learn from the visit to Old Trafford on Boxing Day? Are we ready to face similar issues to that game, the one on Tuesday against Newcastle and this past Wednesday against Chelsea? And most importantly, is our team fresh enough mentally and physically to go and put a performance in on Sunday? I do have this mild anxiety that teams like Chelsea, Newcastle, and Manchester United go on some kind of a second half of their season run like we did last year and potentially reel us in if we don't maintain our levels, and a win for United on Sunday would go a long way towards achieving that. They have their injury issues, as do we. I still think Sunday is too soon for Pau Torres. I hope I'm wrong, but there's a big difference between back to full training and then jumping into a game like that. So I would expect and predict the exact same starting 11 that we saw against Chelsea on Wednesday, and I think those players will want to redeem themselves. And there is this phenomenon, as I've mentioned numerous times, of Villa's bounce-backedness since Unai Emery took over. But if we do fail to beat Manchester United on Sunday, I will 100% predict an epic meltdown of nuclear proportions from our fan base. And so the FA Cup drought continues for another season. At least we didn't have to suffer the indignity of being blanked at home for the first time since Chelsea did it to us in Steven Gerrard's reign. Did they wipe the floor with us this time? I don't know. Maybe the goal will also inject Moussa Diaby with a little boost of confidence as well. Until the Red Devils game, be well, and as always, up the mighty Villa.